Did you know that Johnny Cage was the first character made for Mortal Kombat? Before Scorpion or Sub-Zero, the developers built a prototype where two Johnny Cages fought each other. And that was the whole game. But the franchise spent the next game treating him like he didn't matter. And that changed his entire story. Let's get into it. Johnny Cage was built to be a joke. The original Mortal Kombat was supposed to be a Jean-Claude Van Damme game. Midway wanted to license Van Damme himself and build the whole fighting game around Bloodsport. They made a demo reel, which was a footage of Van Damme remastered into a digital background, and Van Damme said no. So instead of scrapping the martial arts movie star concept entirely, they turned it into a parody. Then they gave him sunglasses and named him Johnny Cage, whose real name was John Carlton. In the first Mortal Kombat, he enters the tournament for publicity and not to save the world. And I think it kind of works fine for the first two games. Because I think every fighting game, or should I say, every game needs the guy who doesn't quite belong. Johnny was that guy, but nobody was picking Johnny because they thought he had the best story. I only picked him most times because he was fun and kind of silly, and he also punched people in the not gonna say that, and that was hilarious. Until Mortal Kombat 3 happened, and the franchise decided the joke was done. Johnny Cage wasn't in the base roster. He was part of this behind-the-scenes drama. His actor, Daniel Pesina, had gone and done a print ad for Bloodstorm, a rival fighting game, while wearing the full Johnny Cage costume, and that did not go well at Midway. Pesina also had royalty disputes, and by the time Mortal Kombat 3 hit, he was out. But whatever the backstage politics were, the in-game result was the same. Johnny Cage was killed during Shao Kahn's invasion of Earthrealm, and they put his headstone in the background of a stage. That's how much they thought they needed him. They brought him back in Mortal Kombat Trilogy with a retcon about his soul being blocked from the afterlife because the realms were merging. Which, and I'm being generous here, feels like, wait, actually we do need him, but we're not going to admit it. Then Mortal Kombat 4 rolls around, and Raiden revives Johnny at his own request so he can fight Shinnok. Cool, he's back. And he's just there, without a reason to exist beyond, this guy used to be in these games. Johnny exists in Mortal Kombat 4 the same way a desk lamp exists in a room. And the 3D era is where the franchise openly starts roasting itself for what it does to this man. In Deadly Alliance, Johnny's in-game bio says he's been filming a movie called Mortal Kombat: The Death of Johnny Cage, where his character keeps getting killed and brought back to life. It's more like the writers looked at their history of killing and reviving this character and turned it into a punchline in the game. They weren't even pretending to respect him anymore. They built a joke about how much of a joke he was. And then, because of course, he dies for real this time. Johnny, Sonya, and Jax get overwhelmed by the Deadly Alliance's Tarkatan warriors. The writers couldn't even let him survive the game where they were already joking about him dying. In Deception, Johnny and the other fallen Earthrealm warriors get resurrected and brainwashed by the Dragon King Onaga to serve as his mind-controlled slaves. So he's not even a corpse with dignity. This time, we see him as a puppet showing up in cutscenes with blank eyes. In Armageddon, he's back again. And his bio is interesting. Johnny talks about the forces of light having no clear leader, about Raiden going dark, about everything falling apart, and he decides to step up, to try and rally the good guys. That's the first genuine hint of Johnny Cage the leader. The first whisper that there might be something underneath the sunglasses and the ego. But Armageddon is the game where every single character fights at the Pyramid of Argus, and they all die. Whatever leadership seeds they planted got incinerated along with the rest of the roster. The franchise treated Johnny Cage like a revolving door. For over a decade, his job description was show up, get killed, get retconned back, and maybe, just maybe get brainwashed if the writers were feeling spicy. While Scorpion was getting his revenge and Liu Kang was being the chosen one, Johnny was the roster slot they'd cut first whenever they needed room for someone cooler. Now, here's an exception to all of this, and I think it matters a lot. The first Mortal Kombat movie had Lyndon Ashby play as Johnny Cage. Johnny was the POV character. He was more like the audience who didn't know what Mortal Kombat was and learned alongside us. He's the comedian, yeah, but he's also genuinely heroic. He killed Scorpion, Goro, and he got paired with Sonya. He was funny, but never a coward. The movie gave Johnny Cage a complete three-dimensional character, when the games were still treating him as the dude that overstayed his welcome. And then, Mortal Kombat Annihilation killed Johnny in the opening scene. Shao Kahn snaps his neck while he's trying to save Sonya. Then Mortal Kombat 9 happened where the timeline reset. And for the first time, Johnny Cage somehow survived the story while almost everyone else didn't. But I believe you will hit the subscribe button if you haven't. In this timeline, Johnny Cage hits on Sonya immediately, and he makes everything about himself. The writers reset the entire universe and put Johnny right back at square one. But the reboot does something the original timeline never did. It lets him live. Because Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Kitana, one by one, Earthrealm's heroes fell and got turned into Netherrealm revenants under Chi's control. And by the end of the story, the list of surviving Earthrealm champions is just Johnny. But hold on, because Mortal Kombat 9 didn't suddenly transform Johnny into something deep. He was still mostly a comic relief throughout the story. Johnny was described as a descendant of an ancient Mediterranean cult that bred warriors for the gods. His green shadow energy had a mythological origin. It's inherited supernatural power from a warrior lineage going back centuries. But they didn't develop it much in MK9. They planted it and moved on. But that seed became the root of an important moment in Johnny's story. Because in Mortal Kombat 10, which was set about 2 years after Mortal Kombat 9, Johnny, Sonya, and Kenshi were on a helicopter headed to Raiden's Sky Temple. The fallen elder god Shinnok had escaped and was attacking the Jinsei, which is Earthrealm's life force. And if nobody stops him, everything's done. Along the way, they fight revenant versions of their old friends, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Jax, people they used to stand next to. Johnny eventually beats them, and when they reach the Jinsei chamber, Shinnok was already there. Shinnok blasts Kenshi unconscious with his amulet. Johnny and Sonya charge in together, but Shinnok handles them both without trying. Then Shinnok aimed his magic at Sonya, and Johnny dived right in front of it. His entire body ignites green, and this time, it's not the usual gameplay effect he had. It was a power buried in his bloodline for generations, dormant his whole life, finally waking up. And it only wakes up because he's trying to save the woman he loves from dying in front of him. Raiden later says that this energy can only emerge when the desire to protect a loved one is genuine, and not from anger or ego. Then the game jumps forward roughly 25 years. Johnny is now middle-aged, and he married Sonya after the Shinnok fight. They had a daughter, Cassie, but unfortunately, they divorced because Sonya's commitment to Special Forces consumed the relationship. The funny thing is that his ego's still there. This is still Johnny Cage, but it's quieter. He's been humbled by the things that actually humble people. So he assembles a squad for Cassie, her, Jackie Briggs, Takeda, and Kung Jin. Then he trained and sent them on missions. Now, Shinnok returns, corrupted and more dangerous than before, and Johnny gets captured. D'Vorah tortures him while he's bound and helpless, but Cassie finds him. And Johnny, bleeding and barely conscious, but he doesn't ask to be saved. He tells her to stop Shinnok and whispers that he loves her. Then he passes out, because his body has nothing left. Cassie fights corrupted Shinnok and her shadow powers activate. It's the same green energy that first woke up in her father, 25 years earlier when he threw himself between a god and the woman he loved. And as expected, she wins. I think Mortal Kombat 10 Johnny Cage is a better protagonist than Liu Kang. I'll say it. Liu Kang is the chosen one, but he wins because the universe told him he's the hero. Johnny wins because he grew up, put in the work, and stepped up when everyone else went down. The crazy thing is that most of it happened by accident. Nobody mapped this out when they created a Van Damme parody in a basement in Chicago. The writers stumbled into it across multiple games, recognized what they had when it started clicking, and committed to it. Mortal Kombat 10 completed Johnny's story, but Mortal Kombat 11 did something nobody expected. Mortal Kombat 11 introduces time travel, and past and present versions of characters get dragged into the same story. And that means young Johnny, the arrogant, obnoxious 25-year-old from MK9, meets old military Johnny face to face. Young Johnny sees his future and hates it, because it includes baggy eyes, obviously, failed marriage, and military work. And he's like, where's the fame? Where's the lifestyle? Where's the fun in any of this? And old Johnny has to look at this kid and explain that the fame fades. Marriages don't always work. The money means less than you think. But the people you fight for, the people you sacrifice for, those are the things that last. It's the franchise putting the joke and the hero in the same frame and making them talk it out. The Sonya reconciliation happens here too. After years apart and after the divorce, Johnny and Sonya find each other again. Looking at themselves, they see people who went through hell together, deciding they'd rather face whatever's next side by side. The kind of emotional beat Mortal Kombat almost never even attempts. Then, Mortal Kombat 1 drops in 2023, and Liu Kang, now Fire God, rebuilds reality from scratch. Johnny Cage is reset to 0, and we find out he recently divorced from Christina. This version makes it seem like he's desperate for relevance. On paper, he's the joke again, but the game develops him, again, because apparently that's a law of this franchise. Every version of Johnny Cage starts as a punchline and ends as a person. His relationship with Kenshi is the emotional spine of Mortal Kombat 1's story. They start as enemies but end up spending months training side by side while getting on each other's nerves. Kenshi thinks Johnny's a shallow clown, and Johnny thinks Kenshi's a self-righteous criminal. They're both partially right. Then Shang Tsung's lab happens. Melina, in a Tarkat-fueled episode, goes berserk, and Kenshi throws himself in front of Johnny to protect him. But unfortunately, Melina stabs Kenshi in both eyes. Johnny tears cloth from his own outfit, applies eye balm, and wraps it around Kenshi's ruined eyes, creating the blindfold that becomes Kenshi's signature look across the entire franchise. When Kenshi tells Johnny and Kung Lao to go without him, says he's useless, says their lives aren't worth the risk, but Johnny refuses, and he walks with Kenshi through the living forest. And later, he gives Kenshi Sento. The canonical ending ties everything together. Liu Kang reveals his master plan. He wants the people of Earthrealm to learn that other realms exist, and he wants Johnny to be the one to break the news through movies. Now we see the joke completing itself. A character who was created as a guy who makes movies about his fighting adventures is now canonically making movies about his fighting adventures, and it's his actual purpose in Liu Kang's universe. The thing the franchise treated as a punchline turned out to be exactly what the world needs from him. What's your favorite Johnny Cage moment? I'd love to see them in the comments. That's it for now. Hit the subscribe button and drop a character request. I'm Joe, and I'll see you in the next one.